What if I told you that for the last 3 years, you haven't had a single original thought? Not because you're not intelligent, not because you're not creative, but because you haven't given your brain a single moment of silence to actually think one. Right now, the average person spends 7 hours a day staring at a screen. 7 hours. That's more time than most people sleep. More time than most people spend with their families. More time than most people spend doing anything that actually matters to them. And the terrifying part, most of that time isn't even enjoyable. Studies show that people report feeling worse after scrolling social media, not better. They feel emptier, more anxious, more behind, more like they're watching their life happen to other people, while theirs quietly passes them by. So if scrolling doesn't make you happy, if it doesn't relax you, if it doesn't give you energy or ideas or peace, then why can't you stop? That's the question Marcus asked himself one night at 1:47 a.m., phone in hand, thumb moving automatically, brain completely numb. And the answer he found changed everything. Marcus was 28 years old, designer by day, scroller by night, and if you looked at his life from the outside, everything seemed fine. Good job, small apartment he liked, friends he'd text but rarely actually see. He wasn't depressed exactly, he wasn't falling apart, he was just stuck in this low-level, hard-to-describe fog, where every day felt almost like the day before, where he'd have ideas, real, exciting ideas, and then nothing. They'd disappear before he ever did anything with them. He'd think about starting a project, learning something new, creating something, and then, somehow, 3 hours would vanish into a feed he couldn't even remember. The worst part, the scrolling didn't even feel good anymore. It hadn't for a long time. It was just automatic. Like his thumb had its own agenda. Like his brain had quietly outsourced the decision of what to do next to an algorithm that didn't know him, didn't care about him, and was specifically designed to keep him watching. He'd catch himself mid-scroll sometimes, staring at content he didn't care about, from people he didn't know, living lives he didn't want. And he'd think, why am I still doing this? And then he'd scroll anyway. That's the moment that scared him most, not the hours lost, not the ideas that never became anything, but that moment of total clarity, followed immediately by doing nothing about it. He started to wonder, is this just who I am now? Is this just what life feels like after 25? Is everyone else secretly this empty too, and nobody talks about it? Maybe you've asked yourself the same questions. Maybe right now, if you're being honest with yourself, you recognize something in Marcus's story that makes you a little uncomfortable. Because that discomfort, that's not weakness. That's your mind telling you it knows something is wrong. But here's the part nobody is talking about. The reason you can't stop scrolling isn't what you think it is. It's not laziness, it's not lack of discipline, it's not even addiction in the traditional sense. It's something much deeper. And once you understand what's actually happening inside your brain, you'll never see that glowing screen the same way again. Your brain has a secret, a hidden system that most people never learn about in school. Scientists call it the default mode network, and it might be the most important thing happening inside your skull right now, when your brain has nothing to do, when there's no input, no task, no stimulus demanding your attention. It doesn't shut down, it activates. It switches into a different gear, a deeper gear, and in that gear, extraordinary things happen. Your brain starts connecting ideas across different parts of your memory. It processes emotions you haven't had time to feel. It works through problems you've been avoiding. It generates, and this is the part that matters most, original thoughts. The kind of thoughts that become ideas, the kind that become plans, the kind that become creative work, the kind that become the projects, businesses, art, and decisions that actually change your life. Every writer who ever had a breakthrough in the shower Default mode network. Every entrepreneur who woke up at 3 a.m. with the answer to a problem they'd been stuck on for weeks. Default mode network. Every person who finally figured out what they actually wanted after a long walk with no headphones. Default mode network. This system is not optional. It is not a luxury. It is how the human brain was designed to function. And here's what's destroying it. Every time you pick up your phone and open an app, every time you fill a quiet moment with content, every time you reach for stimulation instead of sitting with silence, you are shutting that system down, not pausing it, shutting it down completely, because the default mode network only activates when your brain has nothing else to process, when there's silence, when there's stillness, when there's boredom. Yes, boredom. The thing that modern life has made you terrified of is the exact condition your brain needs to do its most important work. Every notification is a shutdown signal. Every scroll is a shutdown signal. Every podcast playing in the background just to have some noise is a shutdown signal. And most people are sending that signal hundreds of times a day, which means the version of you that could have thought of something brilliant, created something meaningful, solved something important, never gets the chance because your brain never gets the silence it needs to begin. And the apps, they know this. The engineers who built the platforms you use every day have studied this exact system. They know that the moment you feel bored, the moment your default mode network is about to activate, your thumb goes to your phone automatically. So they built systems to make that moment arrive faster. Shorter videos, faster cuts, infinite scroll, autoplay, pull to refresh, which triggers the same dopamine mechanism as a slot machine. All of it engineered to ensure that your brain never gets the silence it needs. Not because they're evil, because your attention is worth billions of dollars, and your original thoughts, they're worth nothing to them. That's the system Marcus was trapped inside, without knowing it, for years. Until one night he decided to run an experiment. 30 days, no social media, no mindless scrolling, no filling silence with content, just 30 days to see what happened on the other side. He didn't expect much, honestly. He thought he'd be bored. He thought he'd miss it. He thought nothing would really change. He was wrong about all three. The first 3 days were harder than Marcus expected. Not dramatically, not in a crisis kind of way. Just this persistent, low-level discomfort. Like something was missing. Like there was an itch he couldn't scratch. He'd sit down for lunch and his hand would move toward his phone automatically. He'd finish a task at work and immediately feel the pull. Waiting for the elevator. Standing in line at a coffee shop. Walking to his car. Every small pocket of unoccupied time, every moment where his brain had nothing scheduled, felt strange, almost wrong. Like silence was a problem that needed to be solved. And that's when the first thing hit him. He realized he had been treating every empty moment as something to be filled, not enjoyed, not experienced, just filled. Like blank space was an error in his day that needed correcting. By the end of the first week, the discomfort started to fade. He still reached for his phone by reflex, but he started catching himself, started noticing the urge before obeying it, and in those small moments of resistance, something unexpected started happening. Thoughts. Not important ones at first, just thoughts. Ideas that floated up from somewhere he'd forgotten existed. A memory from years ago that made him smile. A question he'd been carrying without realizing it. A flicker of curiosity about something he hadn't thought about in months. Nothing earth-shattering, but different, real, his. By the second week, the silence stopped feeling uncomfortable. It started feeling like something else. Space. For the first time in years, Marcus had space inside his own mind, not emptiness. Space. There's a difference. Emptiness is the feeling after. You've been scrolling for an hour and you put the phone down and you feel nothing. Space is what happens when you haven't been scrolling at all. When your mind has had the room to wander, to explore, to wonder. He started noticing things he'd stopped noticing. The light at a certain time of afternoon. The way a problem at work was actually interesting, not just stressful. Music he'd had on in the background for months that he'd never actually heard. He started having conversations differently. Instead of half listening while part of his brain craved input, he was just there, present, in the room, hearing what people were actually saying. And then, around day 19, it happened. He was walking home from work, no headphones, no podcast, just the city and his thoughts. And somewhere between the second and third block, an idea arrived. Not a small one, a real one. A creative project he'd been circling for 2 years without ever getting close enough to actually see. And suddenly he could see it, clearly, completely, like it had always been there, waiting for the noise to stop so it could finally be heard. He sat on a bench for 40 minutes and wrote everything down. Not because he forced himself to, because he couldn't stop. The ideas kept coming, one leading to another, his brain finally given the silence it had been waiting for, doing exactly what it was built to do. That was the moment Marcus understood what the last 3 years had actually cost him. Not time, not productivity, not even happiness exactly, creativity. The ability to have an original thought, the ability to hear himself think, the ability to access the part of his mind that knew what he actually wanted and what he was actually capable of. Scrolling hadn't just wasted his evenings, it had silenced the most important voice in his life, his own. By the end of 30 days, Marcus had started the project, not finished it, not launched it, but started, which was more than he'd done in the 2 years before. He also noticed other things that surprised him. His anxiety was lower, not gone, but quieter. The constant low-level hum of not enough that had followed him for years had softened. He slept better, not because he changed his sleep habits, but because his brain wasn't wired up on stimulation when he lay down. It was just ready to rest. He felt more confident in conversations, not because he'd changed anything about himself, but because he actually knew what he thought now. He had opinions that were his, responses that came from real reflection, not from half-remembered content he'd consumed and mistaken for his own perspective. And the creativity, the ideas kept coming. One project turned into a direction turned into a plan turned into the first real forward movement Marcus had felt in years, not because of some dramatic life overhaul, because he gave his brain 30 days of silence. That's it. 30 days, 210 hours to let the most powerful creative organ in the known universe do what it was designed to do. Here's what I want you to understand. This isn't a story about social media being evil. It's not a story about phones destroying your life. It's a story about what happens when you never give yourself silence. And most people reading this have not had real silence, not real, chosen, uninterrupted silence. In years, maybe longer, you've been available, always available, to notifications, to content, to other people's and thoughts and opinions and highlight reels. And somewhere in all that availability, you stop being available to yourself, your own ideas, your own voice, your own quiet, persistent sense of what you actually want your life to look like. That voice doesn't disappear. It doesn't give up. It just gets quieter every time you reach for the phone instead of sitting with the silence, and louder every time you don't. Maybe you've been feeling stuck lately, not in a dramatic way, just this sense that you're capable of more than you're doing, that there's something you're supposed to be building, creating, pursuing, but you can't quite see it clearly enough to start. Maybe that's not a motivation problem. Maybe that's not a discipline problem. Maybe that's a noise problem. And the solution is simpler and harder than any productivity system you've ever tried. Put the phone down. Not forever, not dramatically, not with a big announcement to your followers about your digital detox journey. Just put it down for 1 hour tonight. Sit with the discomfort. Let your brain wander. Let the silence feel strange. And then let it feel like something else. Space. And see what shows up. Because the idea you've been waiting for, the plan you can't quite see, the version of yourself you keep meaning to become, they're not hiding in a better app. They're not in the next video. They're not somewhere you haven't looked yet. They're in the silence you keep avoiding. And they've been waiting for you to get quiet enough to hear them. If this video made you stop and think, that's your default mode network doing exactly what it was built to do. Honor that. Subscribe to The Blind Spot for more videos like this. Every week we go deeper into the invisible patterns quietly shaping your life. The habits nobody questions, the blind spots nobody points out. Because the most important changes you'll ever make usually start with seeing something you've been looking past this whole time. The silence is waiting. All you have to do is choose it.